What if I told you that the most feared man in Harlem history died eating chicken and grits at 2 a.m. in a rundown restaurant, and the man who quietly took his place made him look like a small-time street hustler? This is the story of two kings of Harlem. One ruled with respect, the other ruled with something far more terrifying: pure, cold ambition. And by the time the second man was done, the streets of New York would never be the same again. The year was 1968. Harlem belonged to one man, Ellsworth Raymond Johnson, known to everyone as Bumpy. Bumpy Johnson wasn't just a gangster, he was Harlem's godfather. Born in Charleston, South Carolina in 1905, he was sent to Harlem as a teenager because his parents feared his temper would get him killed in the South. And they were right to be afraid. Bumpy was different. He didn't just survive in Harlem, he conquered it. He started as an enforcer for the legendary numbers queen Madame Stephanie St. Clair, and when the ruthless mob boss Dutch Schultz tried to take over Harlem's rackets in the 1930s, Bumpy went to war. Over 40 murders, multiple kidnappings, bodies dropped across Manhattan. When Schultz was finally gunned down in 1935, Bumpy didn't just win, he negotiated. He sat down with the Italian mafia and cut a deal that gave him control of Harlem while letting the Italians think they were still in charge. That was Bumpy's genius. He played both sides. He was arrested more than 40 times in his life. He survived Alcatraz. He was so respected in Harlem that when he staged a sit-down protest at a police station in 1965, refusing to leave as a statement against police surveillance, a judge actually acquitted him. Bumpy Johnson wasn't just a criminal, he was a symbol. He was the man who made the streets feel safe and dangerous at the same time. But then came July 7th, 1968. Bumpy was at Wells Restaurant in Harlem. It was nearly 2 a.m. The waitress had just served him coffee, a chicken leg, and hominy grits. He was under federal indictment for drug conspiracy at the time. But death didn't come from a rival's bullet. It came from his own chest. Bumpy Johnson clutched his heart, fell over, and died right there at the table. He was 62 years old. Harlem mourned. The streets went quiet. And everyone asked the same question: who fills a void that massive? The answer arrived quietly. No announcement, no ceremony. Just a lean, quiet man from LaGrange, North Carolina, who had been standing in Bumpy's shadow, watching, learning, and waiting. His name was Frank Lucas, and what Frank Lucas did next would make Bumpy Johnson's entire empire look like a neighborhood card game. Frank Lucas was born in 1930, into a world that gave him nothing but rage. He once said the moment that changed his life was watching the Ku Klux Klan murder his 12-year-old cousin, for nothing more than looking at a white woman the wrong way. After a violent confrontation with a former employer, where he cracked the man's skull with a pipe, stole $400, and burned the business to the ground, his mother told him to run. So he ran, straight to Harlem. And in Harlem, he found Bumpy Johnson. Lucas claimed he was Bumpy's driver, his right hand, his most trusted student. Whether that was fully true or partly legend, one thing is certain: Lucas learned everything he needed from watching Bumpy operate. But here's what made Frank Lucas fundamentally different from every criminal who came before him, including Bumpy himself. Bumpy worked within the system. He dealt with the mafia. He played the game. Lucas looked at that same system and said, "I don't need them. I'll build my own." So he flew to Bangkok, Thailand, the Golden Triangle, the heart of the world's opium production. And at a bar called Jack's American Star Bar, a hangout for Black American soldiers, Lucas met a former U.S. Army Master Sergeant named Leslie Ike Atkinson. Atkinson had connections to local opium growers. He was already moving product. Lucas saw the opportunity that no one else in Harlem even imagined. A direct pipeline from the poppy fields of Southeast Asia to the streets of New York, completely bypassing the Italian mafia. No middlemen, no commissions, no permission needed. Lucas called his product Blue Magic. And here's the part that made it truly terrifying. The heroin was 98 to 100% pure when it arrived. Most dealers cut their product repeatedly to stretch profits. Lucas refused. He sold it pure. That meant it was devastatingly addictive. That meant people came back faster. That meant he could charge more than anyone else and still undercut the competition. At his peak, Frank Lucas was making $1 million per day. $1 million. Every single day. Cash stuffed into every corner of his life. And here's where it gets even darker. Lucas didn't trust anyone from New York. He believed city people were too tempted, too greedy, too likely to betray him. So he went back to North Carolina and brought up his own family, brothers, cousins, close friends from his hometown, people who had never seen a city, people who wouldn't know how to steal from him even if they tried. He built an organization based entirely on blood loyalty. It was brilliant. It was ruthless. And it was completely unprecedented. But power like that doesn't stay invisible forever. In 1971, Lucas walked into the Muhammad Ali versus Joe Frazier championship fight wearing a chinchilla coat and matching hat that cost $125,000. He sat front row. He flaunted everything. And the wrong people were watching. Law enforcement started paying attention. The flash, the money, the visibility. It was the beginning of the end. In January 1975, a task force of 10 DEA agents and 10 NYPD detectives raided Lucas's home in Teaneck, New Jersey. They found nearly $600,000 in cash and keys to safe deposit boxes in the Cayman Islands. Lucas was convicted and sentenced to 70 years in prison. But here's the twist. He didn't stay locked up for long. Frank Lucas turned informant. He gave up dozens of other drug dealers and even corrupt police officials. His sentence was cut down to 5 years served. He entered the Witness Protection Program. Then, in 1984, he was caught selling drugs again and went back to prison until 1991. Years later, an old man sitting in New Jersey, Frank Lucas looked back at his life and said something that still sends chills down your spine. He said, "I probably did more damage than I did good. I was in the heroin business, the worst you can get. You can't get no lower than that. And I was in it, up to my head. If you want to say I was a no-good son of a you-know-what, be my guest, because that's what I was." Deliver in a male James voice, controlled cinematic storytelling tone, and normal pace with clean pauses between paragraphs.